I'm Jennifer Hector, and I'm a marriage and family therapist here, and I work primarily with school-age kids, but I also work with middle school and teens. I do a lot of play-based work, a lot of, you might say, somatic therapy with kids, so a real embodied approach. I wanted to share kind of what my experience is with yoga and mindfulness and kind of how I've come to the place of talking to you guys about it. For me, my journey with both really began when I was 17 and was just hugely impactful. I had a mom who got me into meditation because of a lot of chaos and strife in my upbringing. And I have to say that anchored me from then forward. I continued to use that practice throughout my young adult life and then up to present time. I learned transcendental meditation was my introduction into mindfulness and meditation. And then yoga came when I was in my 20s. And again, it was a real pivotal point for me. I spent a lot of time as a young kid doing gymnastics and bouncing around and such, but yoga really pulled in a big piece around well-being for me. So I decided, well, maybe I want to be a teacher, and did some teacher trainings, and wanted to go further into the mental health pieces that an embodied practice can be a part of. So then that led me into psychotherapy and specifically working with youth and parents. So that's just a little bit about me and the connection of my life and how it intersects with yoga and mindfulness.
I'm coming from more of that mindfulness perspective. And I'm Rebecca Schneider, and I'm a doctoral psychology intern here, which means I am in the process of getting my PhD in clinical psychology. I'm in the last year, where I'm here and also at Stanford as well. And I do a lot of cognitive behavioral work, or CBT therapy, especially with anxious, depression, across all ages, so from 5 all the way up to 17 years old. And I especially like to incorporate mindfulness-based strategies into my approaches. So we'll get into this a little bit later, but I do a lot of mindfulness and acceptance-based work. So dialectical behavior therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and some of those kind of newer third wave approaches to treatment. So that's kind of what I bring to the table here tonight.
Yeah. We'll be sharing more about the intersection with mental health in these practices. We're going to introduce mindfulness initially, and then introduce you to some methods and practices and benefits as it pertains to mental health and the services that we have. And then we'll go a little deeper into mindfulness as it occurs with yoga, and looking again at methods, and then we'll be doing some practice with it so you guys can try it on, and looking again at the benefits. The final piece is sort of mindful family and how parents fit into the equation of using yoga and mindfulness with kids. And then we have some research and resources for you.
To start, kind of thinking about what is mindfulness. And mindfulness is something, again, that we mentioned has been around for centuries. It was started out more in Eastern cultures, and then only recently has it become kind of more of this big buzzword around here. So nowadays we hear mindfulness a lot in different contexts. It's being used in school, it's being talked about on talk shows and everyday life. And so we're going to first go into a little bit more about what it actually is, and then the second part is going to be a lot of practice around ways to incorporate it into our everyday life. So before I get into the more technical definition of mindfulness, I wanted to introduce it the way that I like to introduce it with children. So when I talk about mindfulness with kids, I like to bring in what's called a mindfulness jar or a glitter jar. And for this, if you shake it up, you can see all the glitter starts swirling around, and this is our brains normally, right? When everyday life, our brains are just surrounded with thoughts and worries, and we're thinking about what we, did yesterday and what we said to that person, and we're planning ahead for, what we're gonna have for dinner tonight and the test tomorrow, and we just have this swirl. And mindfulness, through the practice of mindfulness, helps us settle our mind down. So as the glitter settles, that's kind of our mind settling down. And the more we practice mindfulness, the more quickly and more easily we can get that glitter to settle back down in our glitter jar. So there's a lot of different definitions of mindfulness out there. One of the ones that I really like is from somebody named John Kabat-Zinn. He founded what's called Mindfulness-based Stress Reduction, which is probably one of the first therapies to incorporate mindfulness into it. And his definition of mindfulness is that it's paying attention in a particular way. So paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. And basically what this means is that when we're being mindful, we're paying attention not to the things in the past, not to things in the future, but to what's going on in this moment. And we're doing so in a really particular way. So we're not judging it, we're not labeling it, we're just kind of noticing what's going on around us in this moment. And a lot of times when we think of mindfulness, we think of kind of those more formal definitions. So kind of sitting down and paying attention to our breath for several minutes or an extended period of time in a row. And that's one really important component of mindfulness. It's also not the only way we can practice it. So mindfulness can also be really informal and done really at any point of your day, throughout the day. So we can mindfully, even just while we're brushing our teeth, the act of noticing what we're doing and paying attention to the feel of the brush and each step of the way, that's practicing mindfulness. When we're racing around, if we just take 1 second to stop and pay attention to our breath or notice what's going on around us, we're practicing mindfulness. So kind of paying attention to both definitions. Another way of thinking about how we can be mindful and different ways to be mindful in our everyday life, this is pulled from dialectical behavior therapy. And in DBT, we talk about mindfulness as being something that you can do where you're just observing, so mindfully observing, mindfully describing, and mindfully participating in activities. So when we're mindfully observing situations, that's when we're just noticing what's going around us. So without putting words onto the experience, without trying to judge it, really just noticing what's happening, noticing our body sensations, what's going on inside of us and around us. Describing is the next step. So that's when we actually put labels onto what we're seeing and noticing. And we're labeling it whatever we can see around us. So even just right now, I see several people in chairs. I'm noticing that there's, this wall over here. I'm noticing that it's kind of warm up here. All of that is describing in a very non-judgmental way what's happening to me right now. And then the last piece is participating. So when we do this, that's kind of that idea of like fully throwing yourself into whatever you're doing. That expression of dance like nobody's watching. Really without kind of worrying about what others are thinking or what you're doing or how you're doing it, being fully present in whatever activity you're doing it. So whether it's dancing, playing a board game with your family, watching a movie, just kind of being present in that moment. And each of those are different ways to be mindful. So what's the point of practicing mindfulness? There's been a lot of research now about mindfulness, and I think one of the key themes that's been coming out from it is that mindfulness helps us be in the here and now. It helps us be focused on our life. And when we're focused in our life, we're able to take that pause and then decide what we want to do. So when we experience something in life, when we're able to be mindful and control our attention a little bit better, we have that ability to stop before we react and act on it. So instead of being reactive to what happens, we're able to choose how we want to be. So thinking about mindful versus non-mindful qualities. When we're feeling mindful, we are much more focused, we're much more aware and present, and we can be responsive to what happens to those around us, family members, friends, work colleagues, everybody around us. And then when we're not as mindful, that's when we're a little bit more distracted, we're a little bit more careless, we're not paying attention as much. So mindfulness can help train our brain to be more easily able to sustain that attention and to regulate our attention and kind of know what's going on around us and what's going on inside of us as well. So as I said, there's been a lot of studies of mindfulness now. It's been kind of just more and more are coming out. And mindfulness is turning out to be one of those things that's really just helpful across all areas of our life. Pretty much anything you can think of, there's been a study done that says mindfulness has helped with this. So just breaking down some of the key findings. When we look in the mental health world, mindfulness, again, adding that to mental health treatments has been found to really help across all different aspects. So especially with ADHD and more kind of attention and executive functioning areas, mindfulness has been found to really help with that sustained attention, that ability to regulate your attention and kind of just pay more attention in your life. When we look at more of the behavioral disorders, so kind of more of those outbursts or tantrums or aggressive impulses, incorporating mindfulness has been found to reduce the number of tantrums and outbursts and help kids sort of catch themselves before they start to respond to things. And then in that anxiety, mood, depression area too, being more mindful helps you stay more present. So you are ruminating less, you're worrying less, and therefore your mood is higher and your anxiety is lower. So again, mindfulness has been helpful in that area as well. And then outside of mental health, mindfulness seems to be really helpful just for all of us in general, for just general health and well-being. So it's been found to reduce stress, improve job satisfaction, reduce tiredness. It's also been found to help with immune functioning. So there have been studies that have even shown that incorporating mindfulness helps with things like psoriasis or fibromyalgia or chronic pain or headaches. A lot of those physical ailments and illnesses have been improved by incorporating mindfulness. And it looks like it does work kind of in that immunological level of the body. And then it's also been found to help improve sleep quality as well, which really a range of us can benefit from. And then looking even more broadly at more of that personal development level, when we incorporate mindfulness into our life, that helps us be a little bit more compassionate to ourselves, so some more of that self-compassion skill, which can be really hard for a lot of us. And it can also help with compassion towards others, so improving empathy towards others, being able to take somebody else's perspective, being more flexible in the way we think about things, and how we regulate our emotions. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, that attention piece seems to be like one of the core pieces of why mindfulness works and how it helps. So kind of a big core across all of these different areas is this ability to sustain our attention and flexibly choose what we attend to and have more control over that and notice more about what's going on inside us, around us, being less distractible, having a better working memory. All of those things have been shown in various studies to be helped by incorporating mindfulness. And we see these benefits both when we just like novice mindfulness practitioners, so after just a really brief course of mindfulness, and then we can see it even more when we look longer term, so people who kind of have it as part of their daily life for many years. And then this slide is here just to kind of demonstrate that mindfulness not only can it affect all these different areas, it looks like it does so by impacting the actual brain structure and the functioning of the brain. So there's a lot of different studies looking at different parts of the brain that I'm not going to go into at this talk, but this is just one example where in one study they found that the actual density of the gray matter in the brain, those parts that were tied to some of those things that we've seen benefit, so the gray matter around learning and memory processes, emotion regulation, perspective taking, was found to increase in density after a course of mindfulness. So the red bar is those who went through an 8-week course of mindfulness versus the blue controls. So kind of, you can think of it as sort of strengthening the muscle density, just like you would when you're exercising and you're increasing those muscles. the more you practice mindfulness, the more it can strengthen those areas of the brain as well. A lot of tonight is going to be practicing and kind of going through how can we use this in our daily life. One of the key pieces of mindfulness is attending to the breath. Breathing is kind of that grounding, anchoring piece. Whenever we're out and about, like, we can use just paying attention and noticing our breath as the basis for it. So there's a lot of different ways to help our kids know how to and be comfortable attending to their breath. When we get into the teenage years and older, just noticing the breath can be enough, but we have to get a little bit more creative with younger ages. So there, on the top left corner, one thing that we often or sometimes can use to help have like a physical body cue around how to breathe mindfully for kids is what's called animal breathing. So in this, we have kids think of like a butterfly or an animal and use the actual motion to kind of help with their in and out breath. So we'll have kids be a butterfly, and so when they breathe in, they flap their wings up, and when they breathe out, they flap their wings down. And that can kind of have that whole body cue, similar to what Jennifer will be talking about with the yoga piece of it as well. We also can play around with like breathing buddies. So these are little stuffed animals that kids can use, and to help them understand that when you take deep breaths, you want to take it from the belly or the abdomen. We oftentimes get caught up in breathing really shallowly, and so to help us see that we're breathing from our stomach, we can actually take a stuffed animal, have them lay on the floor, and watch as the breathing buddy rises and falls with them as they breathe. And that's something that's been incorporated more and more into school settings as well. Then on the left is what's called rainbow breathing. So this also helps kind of bring a visualization component into it, so they're not just having to sit and breathe. With this one, we have kids basically imagine each color of the rainbow and breathing out that color, and like a stream of whatever they love or whatever makes them happy. So has some of that positive imagery to it also. So for example, I might, I love strawberries, so I'd first breathe out like a stream of strawberries, and then I would imagine breathing out like, my favorite old sweatshirt that I love to wear that's orange, and then imagine, being covered in yellow sunlight and kind of working through that with my breathing. And then this last one is candle or flower breathing. So for this, we have to help people kind of visualize it a little bit more. Imagine that they're smelling a flower and then blowing out a candle. So if you guys want to do this one with me, we'll just do a couple of breaths together. So if you want to imagine breathing in and smelling the flower, and then blowing out that candle. We'll do one more together. And then blow out the candle. And that can be a really nice visualization. Other things up there in terms of breathing that I didn't have, anything that can help kids sort of be more active with it. So I brought this pinwheel. You can have them like practice blowing a pinwheel, and even have like games about who can blow the longest. Blowing bubbles is another way. Anything to help with those deep, slow breathing. Another area that's a really important part of mindfulness, or that's often done, is what's called the body scan meditation. So there's two different ways this can be done. One is progressive muscle relaxation, where basically what it does is you are progressively scanning your body from head to toe, and noticing and tensing and then relaxing each different muscle group one by one. And this helps kind of start to learn more about what's going on in your body, and then also help with that relaxation piece. So it can be really nice when done right before bed as well. So this one, we're going to practice this one together. And so, again, with older ages, you can just sort of progressively squeeze and relax. But with younger kids, it's fun to get really creative. So if everybody wants to hold out their hands, and imagine that they are holding 2 lemons in your hands. And now if you want to squeeze the lemons as hard as you can, and like squeeze, and imagine you're trying to squeeze all of the juice out, and then drop the lemons, and notice the difference. We'll do that one more time. So again, you're squeezing those lemons, and squeeze as much juice as you can. Don't let a single drop stay. And then relax. And now pretend that you're like a lazy furry cat and you just woke up from a long nap. So you're stretching your arms out, and then I want you to stretch them up and stretch and stretch and stretch. And then let the arms drop. And now imagine that you are a turtle and you're sunning yourself on a nice rock, and then all of a sudden you hear a noise. You gotta quick put your head in your shell, hide, 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 you don't want anybody to see you. And then relax, notice the difference. And there's lots of different ways you can go through. So other ones that we do are, you imagine you're trying to wiggle through a fence, and so you're tightening your stomach and trying to squeeze through the fence. You can imagine there's like a pesky fly and you're like squinching up your nose trying to get it off. You're squishing your feet through the mud, and so really feeling the ground beneath your toes. And you can look them up online, but there's a lot of ways to kind of get at each different body part. And then really noticing that relaxing difference. Then the other way to do this is just to scan your body without doing the tensing and relaxing, and just kind of noticing what's going on in your body. So I have a brief 3-minute body scan meditation that will hopefully be able to play up here. This one is geared more towards older ages. It's from a website that I actually really like to use that has some really great guided meditations for various lengths of time, various ways. There's a body scan for sleep one that I use pretty frequently that works really well for me. And so I'm just going to play this as an example of what a body scan looks like.
Begin by bringing your attention into your body. You can close your eyes if that's comfortable to you. You can notice your body seated, wherever you're seated, feeling the weight of your body on the chair, on the floor. You can take a few deep breaths. And as you take a deep breath, bring in more oxygen, enlivening the body. And as you exhale, have a sense of relaxing. You can notice your feet on the floor. Notice the sensations of your feet touching the floor, the weight and pressure, vibration, heat. You can notice your legs against the chair, pressure, pulsing, heaviness, lightness. Notice your back against the chair. Bring your attention into your stomach area. If your stomach is tense or tight, let it soften. Take a breath. Notice your hands. Are your hands tense or tight? See if you can allow them to soften. Notice your arms. Feel any sensations in your arms. Let your shoulders be soft. Notice your neck and throat. Let them be soft. Relax. Soften your jaw. Let your face and facial muscles be soft. Then notice your whole body present. Take one more breath. Be aware of your whole body as best you can. Take a breath. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Which one was that? I also have lots of them. Does this have a particular style and length?
Yeah, this one was just called Body Scan, and then like 3 minutes. So there's also on that website longer body scans as well, where they get into more detail, like notice the toe and notice, this muscle, and kind of working your way up. This was sort of the condensed one. And there's a lot of different guided meditations online. If you Google it, this is just one that I like, and I know that there's a lot of research behind it. So And then with kids too, at the end of it, sometimes we have them like pretend like they're spaghetti. So we have them be like a cooked spaghetti and get really, really tight, and then like an uncooked lip spaghetti, and kind of going through that body and what it feels like to be tense and relaxed. So then another way that we can incorporate mindfulness is more from the perspective of like a grounding technique. So this is when sometimes we can find our minds just starting to like race and get worried and nervous, and we're starting to spin off of control, and we just like can't even focus around us. Mindfulness can be really helpful here to kind of bring us back to the present, ground us in what's going on around us. Grounding techniques are also used a lot in more trauma-focused therapies as well. So when you start to spin off, kind of bringing you back to your current surroundings. So I'd like us to do the first one together, the 5 senses. And for this, what we're going to be doing is just using each of our senses to notice what's going on around in the room. So first, if you want to look around the room and notice 5 things that you can see. Just anything that you can see at all. And now, if you want to find 4 things that you can feel. So this is things like feeling the floor, feeling your skin against the chair, or the clothing on your skin, or the air, anything that you can feel. So 4 things. And next, find 3 things that you can hear. It goes dead quiet when I say that. But it could be like loud things, soft things, the sound of your breathing. If you can't find 3 things, that's okay. And then 2 things you can smell. If there's only 1 thing, that's okay too. And then 1 thing that you can taste. And so using that, I like to do that to kind of just get all senses incorporated. And you don't have to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but that can be kind of a nice way of remembering it. You can also just notice things around you, notice what you hear, notice what you see, notice what you feel. Anchoring is more about paying attention to your feet against the floor, feeling kind of that weight of gravity pulling you down, and just paying attention to that kind of pull and anchor, especially when you're starting to feel like floaty and you're just kind of getting really wrapped up. It can be very grounding to imagine yourself connected to the ground and to the world around you, and kind of visualizing that as well. I often like to do that like before a big test. In high school, I would like make sure I had both feet flat on the floor, and that kind of helped connect me to what was going on around me. And then 3 things is like a little game you can play where you notice, 3 things. I'm looking around, I see 3 things that are red. Or can you find 3 things that are black? Or 3 things that are, made of metal? Or can you think of 3 action figures? Or so just some sort of little games that kind of notice your surroundings or get out of your head and back into your life. And then the last piece on mindfulness that I have is kind of some of these other mindful activities. So as I said, mindfulness can be incorporated really into everyday life. And one thing that we really like to do is called mindful walking. So this can be so it's basically really intentional, mindfully walking. Oftentimes when we move, we're just trying to get from point A to point B. So taking that time to really kind of slowly, kind of that heel to toe walking, noticing what the ground feels like below your feet, noticing what you're seeing, paying attention to your surroundings and just what it feels like. So if you want to practice that at home, that would be a really good one to try. So again, just kind of that heel to toe, very slowly, deliberate walking. Another really popular mindfulness activity is mindful eating. This can be done so one way of doing it is what this picture here is. We often, like raisins are a really common one that we like to use just because we don't really notice what the taste of a raisin is. We don't really pay attention to raisins. They're not really good or bad necessarily. And so when you take a raisin to mindfully eat it, you would basically pick it up. You would really look carefully at it, notice, the wrinkles on the skin and what it's like, notice how it feels and the squishiness, maybe smell it and see if you can smell any of that like grape raisin smell, putting it on your lips and feeling how it feels, putting it on your tongue. holding it in your mouth, and only then would you take your first bite of it. And then kind of noticing how it, when you chew, what that's like, noticing how your body has to take a swallow, and taking step by step, almost like painfully slow, paying attention to that one raisin. You can also do it on a bigger scale where you're eating a meal just mindfully, and this, you don't have to like painfully slow every single bite. Just kind of noticing as you're eating, paying attention to the taste of the food or the textures, not doing that thing where you're watching TV and eating, but really just focusing on your meal. And sometimes it can be nice to like one meal a week set aside to mindfully eat as a family. And then the last piece is more guided imagery. So this is in kind of going through and visualizing some positive or some other kind of thing that incorporates, again, all of your senses. So I have an example here. There's from a book, Imagination. So it's a bunch of different little, really brief meditation kind of imagery type activities for kids. So I'm going to read through one called A Day at the Beach, and I want you guys to, if you're comfortable, kind of get into a more comfortable position while I read this. Close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, otherwise just find kind of a fixed spot to look at. So, imagine you are walking on the beach. Feel the sand between your toes. Is it wet or dry? When you find your perfect spot, spread out your towel and lie down in the sand. Feel the warm sun on your skin and a cool, refreshing breeze. Listen to the waves crashing on the shore. Children playing, seagulls singing, people laughing. Listen to the sound of the waves. A wave comes into shore, and then the wave moves back into the ocean. Now put your hand on your belly. Feel it rise up when you take in a breath, and feel it fall down when you let out a breath. Up and down, in and out, just like the waves in the ocean. Enjoy lying here, feeling your body relaxed at the beach. All right, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the room. So that's just an example, and you can use a script, you can just visualize, it can be a real place, it can be something imaginary. Just kind of having that positive visualization and really trying to put yourself into that place. Yeah, so this is Imaginations, Fun Relaxation Stories and Meditations for Kids by Carolyn Clark. So as I mentioned, I do a lot of mindfulness-based therapies. So if you're interested or wondering kind of, what should I look for when I'm trying to find a therapy for my kid or my teen that incorporates more mindfulness, I have a list of some of the what are called like third wave therapies up here. So mindfulness-based therapies are kind of these more recent third wave of evidence-based treatments getting incorporated more and more. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, is like kind of the first one that came about, and this one is really just like all mindfulness based. So it's typically done in an 8-week group mindfulness format with a lot of these different mindfulness activities that we've talked about. There's also been MBSR programs for parents, MBSR for kids. It's been kind of adapted in various ways. And then mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, is sort of a spin-off on that. That one was developed to help actually with preventing relapse of depression. So again, a little bit more of a group format, but for helping those who have gone through depression prevent relapsing, and has a lot of evidence supporting it. And then dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, is another therapy that has more of an acceptance and kind of change focus to it as well. It's been mainly studied in adolescents and adults with more emotion dysregulation, has a lot of skills as part of it, and mindfulness is a key piece. Every group is started with mindfulness every session, and it's kind of one of the 4 core main modules. And then acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, is also mindfulness and acceptance-based therapy. So mindfulness is a big part of it as well. So where the goal is to kind of open up and be present to what's going on in order to do what matters in your life. And then more traditional cognitive behavioral therapies have also started. More and more clinicians are just using mindfulness generally in their practice. So just asking, do you use mindfulness? What does that look like? Is a nice way to kind of get a sense of whether that's part of it or not. So.
Question. So,
Yeah.
like on those first 2, how would those differ from just teaching mindfulness and some of the techniques that you're sort of exposing us to? Like, if it was focused on stress reduction, what's different about that? What different things are they teaching them?
It's a good question. I think MBSR, a lot of it can be for people just kind of generally and has that stress reduction piece. And a lot of times the groups are focused around, teens with anxiety or with depression or with some of these other mental health pieces. And then we can really specifically focus in on that and tie it into that part as well, and tailor it a little bit more.
I'd also say that it's very skill-based. So like Rebecca was saying, MBSR is like an 8-week program, and it's often, predominantly it's group-based. But you're learning skills each week that build on each other, and it's meant for you as a practice that you continue and even throughout your life. So it's very much being able to take the skills, internalize them, and use them. So it's highly structured. Whereas these other activities that can be added to any type of therapy, like the different breath techniques or visualizations or grounding, all those can be additive pieces, right, versus a set of skills. So these are very skill-based, very directly aimed for treating certain conditions.
How do you recommend incorporating mindfulness into technology and this world of social media, smartphones, and the internet, both for ourselves and for children?
At the very end, we'll have a whole list of slides of apps. There's a lot of apps now that we can use to incorporate mindfulness that teach mindfulness. I found it's been really helpful to, especially for kids who really like being on the iPad or playing games and aren't so, stoked on therapy. Bringing in the iPad in that case and having them, there's some that can help them breathe, like star breathing. They count it down and you see it. There are apps that make it like a game, and different ways. So we can kind of bring technology into there, and that's one way to kind of merge the two.
Which did you say was good for anxiety in children out of the 4? You said there was one that was particularly good for kids and anxiety.
The ones that are best for younger ages would be more of the MBSR and the ACT. I think DBT and MBCT are more for teens and older adults. And then just generally CBT are just mindfulness strategies. A lot of people, even though they're not, doing one of these 4 treatments up here, incorporate it into their practice too.
The intersection of mindfulness and yoga. We've been talking about mindfulness as a practice of noticing the here and now, being present, and particularly using the body as a resource of reminding us of this moment that we're in. How do we use our senses? Where do we attend? And there's lots of different ways to do that daily, whether it's doing the dishes or sitting down and doing a formal practice. Where yoga meets mindfulness is that kind of in the realm of those therapies that Rebecca was just talking about. It's a whole path. It's a whole set of skills and practice to cultivate one's self as a way of increasing well-being and connection to sort of a whole of life. I have up here, a path for cultivating the experience of the whole self. So it really is an integrative approach to well-being. And it is laid out as a path. Yoga means to unite, to join, to direct, disciplining. So again, the wholeness piece, the intellect, the mind, the emotions, the will. It means a poise of the soul, which enables one to look at life in all its aspects evenly, which kind of fits with that mindfulness piece, evenly, being able to hold all aspects and respond versus react impulsively, less awareness. So how do we have this poise, how do we create this poise of the soul to be able to respond to life from a balanced place? And I added a somatic piece of what lives in the mind lives in the body, what lives in the body lives in the mind. So yoga really is, how many people think yoga is purely a physical practice? You know, we get a lot of images of what yoga is. Maybe if I could hear a couple ideas of what you all sort of have come to think of as yoga.
I could say why I started it and what I am doing about it now.
Well, I'm curious, in terms of like the breadth of yoga, are you with the idea that it is just a physical practice, or?
Well, that's why I first got into it, because
The physical.
wanted when I first started.
The entry was the physical. Yeah.
For me it was.
Yeah.
It's evolved to become much less physical and much more emotional and spiritual.
Yeah. So there's all these ways that it opens. So I don't know, I think I often, when I heard about yoga, I thought it was just a physical practice. But actually, sort of the central focus of it is on the mind. And how it connects to all aspects of our being and our experience. Central focus of yoga is not the soul and not the body, it's the mind. And all the practices of yoga are about how to still the fluctuations in our mind, to steady us, to be able to deal with what comes our way in life. So images of balance and uniting body and mind. This quote is from Yoga Education for Children. Yoga, ancient practice, and modern, what it's looking like as a modern practice. So 5,000 plus year old system of human development that began in the Indus Valley in India. The Vedic texts are our first evidence of yoga being written about. So written 3,000 to 1,500 BCE, written about breath, philosophy, and spirituality. The term yoga actually shows up in the Vedic texts by 1,500 BCE. It's a philosophical text. Bhagavad Gita, 700 BCE, begins to lay out 3 distinct paths of yoga, 3 distinct ways to achieve unity, development. Yoga is one of 6 orthodox systems in Indian philosophy. It was systematized by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, and that was 400 BCE. And from 1900 to present time, Hatha Yoga, a type of yoga, was introduced to the West. So types of yoga. Patanjali, who's the one that wrote down the system of yoga, system and practice of yoga, he laid out 8 branches, 8 limbs on this path of yoga. And it's a developmental path, right? So I just wanted to touch on the fact that there's 8, and the 2 that are practiced in the West that are most known are asana, the poses, and pranayama, the breath. Those 2 together, if you hear, oh yes, I practice hatha yoga, or I practice yoga, it's under the asana and pranayama limbs, and they come out of a greater context of what is a path of yoga. So as far as our work with kids go and yoga, we are looking at primarily with using the poses, engaging bodies, and the breath. And of course, within that is naturally mindfulness. Yoga and kids. Yoga is a complete education that can be used with all children because it develops physical stamina, emotional stability, and intellectual and creative talents. You can see with the poses, engaging the core, engaging, so strength, balance. Well, there's a lot of balance in these ones. Crossing the midline, twisting. I wanted to give you a taste, some poses with yoga. So, if you guys are willing, would you put your things on your chair? We're going to be using our chair a little bit for our yoga, but so you can either have your stuff under the chair or on the chair. All right, thank you. I'm going to try this with the microphone, but I don't know how it's going to go. I may end up flopping on the floor. So we're going to stand first with our feet underneath our hips. Great. So this is called mountain pose traditionally, and it's sort of the beginning of the standing poses. There are lots of types of poses: standing poses, forward bends, backward bends, twists, side bends, inversions. And all of these have a specific way that they cultivate our energetic body and work with, well, I'll get to the benefits, but the asanas are particularly about the energy of the body and how do we engage with the energy systems and bring balance to them. So mountain pose is our first standing pose. So I want you to notice your feet. I want you to bend your knees just a little. I want you to notice if when you stand you lock your knees. So feel your feet get a little heavier as you bend your knees a little bit. And now see if you can keep the heaviness in the feet and just begin to straighten the knees without clenching them. Yeah. Okay, so feet. I want you to notice your thighs next. I want you to draw the thighs slightly back. So you may feel your tail reach back towards the window. It's not a big movement. It's just subtle. Your thighs go back. Yeah. And now I want you to find your tail, and you're just going to draw it down towards, just slightly down towards the earth. And you probably will be feeling the connection in the front of your body at the same time. You can often feel your abdomen engage more as your tail goes down. You're going to lift your belly up. You're going to lift your chest up. Now notice if your ribs are wanting to poke forward, draw the ribs slightly back, shoulders back. Draw the chin slightly in, and the crown of the head is going to reach straight up to the sky. So I want you to imagine you have a peak at the very top of your mountain, and it's reaching straight up. Now see if you can grow another inch by pressing your feet further down into the earth, lengthening your torso and the crown of your head. Let your gaze be soft and find a point either straight ahead or on the floor ahead of you that you can rest your gaze. Feel your whole body from your feet up through your legs, your torso, your shoulders, your neck, and the crown of your head. See if you can hold your whole stance and imagine what it feels like to be as solid as a mountain. In yoga with kids, we ask them to visualize as they put their bodies into these shapes. And the shapes correspond most often with nature. So from mountain, we're going to use our breath to begin to move in different poses, slowly. In yoga, we breathe through the nose, and the nose activates our parasympathetic nervous system. And so when I say breathe in, You're going to breathe in through your nose. When I say breathe out, you're going to breathe out through your nose as much as you can. If it's uncomfortable, of course, let your breath come out your mouth. So as we breathe in, your arms are going to reach out and up towards the sky. So breathing in through your nose, reach up and your hands touch. Good. And breathe out and bring them back down, wide. Good. You breathe in through your nose, reach up, look up, touch your fingers. Breathe out through your nose, reach down. Like you're swimming through the air. Last time, breathe in, reach up. Look up, touch. Breathe out, and arms come down. Good, now we're gonna try the moon. You're gonna breathe in, arms reach up. You're gonna hold your arms up. I'm gonna see what you feel most comfortable with. Hands can come together or they stay apart as you take a bend to the right. Notice your left foot. Press it down into the earth. Let your left waist really grow long. Good. Breathe in through your nose to come back to the top. Breathe out as you go over to the other side. Press down through that right foot. Really extend through your right fingertips. Good. Breathe in to come back up. Breathe out, arms come down. Good. Bring your hands to your center. Feel the palms touch. Notice the shoulders. Do they creep up as your hands come together? Draw them down, your shoulders down, your back. Good. Okay, now we're going to do a waterfall. So this is, I'm going to show you, it's a forward bend. You're going to breathe in, reach up. And as you breathe out, you're going to reach down to the earth. Now, hamstrings, the backs of the legs, are very tight. So you may not be touching the floor. What I want you to do, if you're not touching the floor, is I want you to bend your knees. And then fingertips can come down. And I want you to relax your head. And then to come up, we're going to breathe in, and arms come wide. And then you can draw the hands right back to the heart. Okay, so this is a waterfall. Right, so find your mountain. Yeah, good, checking in. Hands come together. As you breathe in through your nose, you're going to reach your arms wide and up. Good. As you reach down, as you breathe out, you're going to bend forward, reach down to the earth. Again, you can bend your knees. Fingertips come to the floor. Let your head relax. Let your neck relax. Feel your belly on your thighs if that's where it is. Good. Now, come up slowly with your in-breath. So you're going to breathe in, arms wide. Come up slowly. Sometimes we can get a little dizzy if we're not used to being upside down. You can look up as fingers touch and breathe out. Hands come down, arms wide. Hands back to center. Good. So that was waterfall. Okay, we're going to take a windmill now. You're going to take your feet wide. This is another forward bend. So we're linking our breath to our movement. Mindful breathing, embodied breathing. Good. Okay, so waterfall, I'm going to show you this one. So just stay in your wide mountain. So I'm going to breathe in and reach up. I'm going to breathe out, and I'm going to bend forward, and I'm going to touch the earth again. Now, if you're not able to touch fully, you can bend your knees a little. Okay, and then from here, we're going to walk our hands over to our right foot with our left hand, and then our left hand comes up. And then we're going to come back down to the center, and we're going to walk over to the other side with right hand to left foot, left arm up. Now, if your neck allows you to, you can look up at your hand. And then hands come back down. We're going to breathe in and come back up and back. Okay, so let's give that a try. So this is our wide mountain. It's going to be a waterfall a windmill on the mountain. Okay, so you're going to breathe in, reach up. Good. As you exhale, you're going to fold forward, arms wide, hands down to the mat or the floor. And if you can touch and keep your legs straight, great. If not, bend your knees. Walk your hands over to your right foot. Left hand on right ankle. Right hand up to the sky. Good. And if your neck is pretty cranky, you just look down at the floor. Don't force it. Okay, now exhale, bring your hand down, both hands to the mat in the center. Walk over to the other foot. So right hand on the ankle, left arm up. If you can look up. If not, look down and just stretch your fingers wide and up to the sky. As you exhale, bring that left hand down, right hand, left hand to center. Good, breathe in, reach up to stand tall, wide arms, hands up. Good, and then back to your center. Okay, and then you can relax your arms and step your feet back together. There's 2 more. You guys up for 2 more? Yes. Yeah? Okay. So this involves your chair. You can, we're doing downward dog, and if there's room, we're going to do a frog jump, but you can elect to not do the frog jump. These are, again, great things to be working with kids. So downward dog with a chair is going to look like this. I like to just incorporate as much movement as possible, and flow with kids is excellent with yoga. You keep it moving and you incorporate the breath. So I breathe in, and as I exhale, I fold forward, and I'm going to reach to the chair and hold the sides, and I'm going to step my feet back, hip width apart. My shoulders wrap, and my tail reaches back to the back wall. Now to come up, you're just going to walk towards your chair. And exhale. So we'll just spend maybe 2 breaths in our downward dog. So face your chair. You can stretch it out, space them out so you have room. Yeah. So roughly a leg's length away from your chair. So your heel should come up on your chair. And you can adjust your feet back, obviously, you can walk back. Okay, we're going to start mountain. We're going to breathe in and reach your arms up. As you exhale, you're going to hinge forward and reach toward your chair. Grab either side. And then walk your feet back a little bit more till they're under your hips and your feet are hip width apart. Actually, try walking back further than your hips now. So let your feet go back further. So you're not an L. Go ahead and come back up if you haven't already. Walk into your chair and stand up. So downward dog is it's a forward bend and it's an inversion. Inversions are technically any time your head is below your hips. It's reversing your blood flow. So in yoga, another type of a class of poses is arm balances. So working with upper body strength is a really big thing, and it's great for kids. So frog jump is essentially jumping with our back feet and seeing how long we could stay in the air. So you're welcome to do a frog jump, or if you just want to, do another forward bend of a downward dog or anything else that we've done. But the frog jump is about energetics again. It's building strength, and it's also engaging with balance. And then go ahead and find your way back to your chair. And I want you to just sit for a minute. I want you to notice your breath. Notice the quality of your mind and any emotions that might be present. So we're not going to do some breath practice, but I just wanted to let you know it is a really big part of Hatha yoga and of our work with kids in yoga. And you got introduced to the breath in yoga through the sequences that we just did. And that's predominantly is we're looking to even out the breath. As the breath becomes even and steady, so does the mind. And when we practice this in a daily way through our yoga practice, it trains us how to breathe when we get in stressful situations, or to notice when we're not breathing, or to notice that we're constricted in our breathing, or where we're holding tension. So when we notice the breath and we move it with the body, we begin to learn our body and how we hold stress and tension, and then be able to reverse that through breath and practice. So I just wanted to show you sort of the Western Bibles of yoga. Mr. Iyengar. Any of you heard of BKS Iyengar? Yeah. So he just passed away a few years ago at 92, I want to say. I'm not sure, but amazing teacher. But he's one of the main teachers that brought Hatha yoga, and even more than just Hatha, just those two limbs. He's brought them all to the West. So this is sort of the modern Bible of yoga, and tons of poses. So poses have, the ones we do and see in gyms and all of that, have only been around for 100 years. So they're relatively new. This is how much, this is pranayama, which is the breath. This is how much it's important in the path of yoga. It's a big book just on breath. So I talked a little bit about the nervous system, how when we engage the breath in very skillful ways, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calm, rest, relax, digest. Versus when we breathe out our mouth a lot, when we breathe shallow, we hold stress, we activate the sympathetic nervous system. So with yoga, we're really practicing how do we build our body to be able to cultivate a more parasympathetic response to stress, or noticing of stress and dealing with stress. Just like mindfulness practices, they really originated through the more ancient practices that typically came out of many religious traditions. So not just Hinduism or Buddhism, but also Christianity has mindful practices as well. But anyway, Yoga Nidra is the body scan. That's where it originates from, is Yoga Nidra. And there are many online. You can find led versions of Yoga Nidra leading through a deep relaxation, cultivating awareness and relaxation at the same time. Really powerful for kids and adults. Particularly helps with sleep. Tons of benefits. I'm going to let you guys read those. They're in the packet. Physiological, internal, external, mental health benefits for kids. Really can increase self-esteem, sense of body awareness, confidence, can greatly improve moods and self-regulation, the ability to accept what's happening and move through them. But again, this isn't like a pill and you take it, it's an overtime. But there are immediate effects as you begin to practice, because it's a skill that you're teaching your body over time. Rebecca introduced me to a study at Duke that's a CBT yoga protocol, which just I'm so excited about. It's very cool. Mindfulness and yoga practice. They're studying it in an evidence-based way. Yoga therapy, you may have heard of it. It particularly can help with trauma and digesting emotional stress. It's just very specific, taking very specific techniques of yoga and applying them in a therapeutic, very specific way. From here on out, there's just some resources for you. This is a mindfulness scale that you can look up at Penn State. You can take a little quiz, right? You check boxes and sort of rate yourself. How mindful am I right now, or have I been? Mindfulness in kids and schools in particular. 91 schools are implementing, from 2012 at least, 91 schools implementing meditation in 13 states. High school students practicing daily focused meditation had 25 fewer class absences, 38 fewer suspensions, and 50% fewer rule infractions. Grades significantly improving, and decrease in aggression. There's more research I've given you there. You can look at different studies. I just wanted to mention mindful parenting. And what I mean by that is, as you guys attend to your well-being and your presence and the way that you respond to stress and challenges in your life greatly impacts your kids. And so the more you cultivate that in your life, the more they see it, and it just snowballs, right? So there are MBSR classes, a lot of them for adults. They're at PAMF. I'm sure there's other ones around too. I know Bob Stoll, Stahl, also teaches mindfulness 8-week classes. Kaiser has them. MBSR. There's 2 books here, but there's many. Daniel Siegel, Parenting from the Inside Out, How a Deeper Self-Understanding Can Help You Raise Children, and then Mindful Parenting for ADHD. That Rebecca was mentioning mindfulness apps. So these are a few. I think there's even a lot more. So this is a way that, you know, if you need something on the go, you can access apps as a way to begin to teach that skill. I put in some local mindfulness resources, again, the PAMF. These are high school classes, middle school and high school, drop-in high school yoga, MBSR classes for youth. And then I did put Bob Stahl's program, Art Mindfulness Programs. It's in the South Bay. And then some kids yoga classes. There are some studios that have very specific classes for them. Those are ones I found. Parks and Rec often has them. If you're interested in teaching yoga to kids and getting trained to teach teens in particular, I put Rise Yoga for Youth. They do teacher training for teens. And that's everything. Questions?
Really appreciate your time, like both of you guys, your time for the seminar. So I appreciate the information. And then as parents, we understand the benefits, but then what if like the children are resistant of doing any of these? Like my kids, like they're like movement based, like skating, or maybe more action based stuff instead of like slowing down and then do those breathing things. They like more like like
action.
zumba-ish singing,
Yeah.
like more like strong, quick beats and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They don't want to do this kind of motion singing. So what do we do what do we do to get them to start?
Yeah. Well, so the classes, the yoga classes, they're designed for kids. So they play games with yoga, and it's not static, poses. Particularly, they'll often play music. They play a lot of interactive games, so it's also social and emotional learning, community-based interactive play, but through movement. So it's almost like I wish they didn't call it yoga, because kids kind of go, oh God, yoga, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
I started teaching aerial yoga because I was tired of the but once you get them in, then they're like, oh, this is fun, but I would be looking for programs that are play-based, that do engage in multiple ways using mindfulness. And there are a lot of videos out there also that are more active. But looking for types of yoga that is like flow. So like I was linking the breath and the poses, right? And you tell stories with it and use a lot of imagination with it. So I hear what you're saying. It's hard to get them, especially when you try and sell them in the old-fashioned of like, oh, mindfulness will be good for you and breathing is good for you. Kids tune out when you say the breath.
It's also very difficult when they have ADHD and with overactivity, they have a hard time settling down, and this is what it's supposed to help them to settle down.
Yep.
They don't know how, even with the visualization and so on.
Yeah, it needs to be more stimulating initially. Get them into their bodies to help them regulate. Did you want to say more about that?
Yeah, and you can, again, that's where the creativity and meeting them where they are. Like, I know, like one kid I had who couldn't sit still to do mindfulness, and so we actually brought out those little marshmallow shooters, and we made a game of like breathing, like, how far can you shoot your marshmallow? How deep of a breath can you take? And he got really excited and interested in that. And then we pulled in the iPads, and we're watching like our breathing on that, and then different ones where like throw a tantrum with your body and now relax, and like throw your whole body on the floor and tantrum and then relax, and kind of different ways to meet them where they are and kind of sneakily get some of that mindfulness.
How do you introduce Savasana to
Oh yeah, Shavasana.
Savasana? Because I'm teaching my daughter's kindergarten class yoga, and I want to incorporate Shavasana, but I feel like I don't know how to introduce it.
Well, introducing it as relaxation. So, like doing yoga with them and ending with Shavasana?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Shavasana.
It's squirmy and they don't really understand why they're doing it.
Yeah, so you start by getting them a little more tired or getting some of that energy out. And then Shavasana, it's like, if you can provide them with a visualization of what it is, like, a dead tree or or log on the river. Okay, now we're going to do log on the river. Everybody lay down. Okay, imagine that you're laying there and the water's floating by. So if you can provide a visualization of it that's playful, that they can relate to. Okay, now imagine there, is a bright, warm sun on your legs as your log is laying there. So you just have to use the imagination.
So it doesn't have to be silent during Shavasana?
Well, you could be talking them through it.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of almost like an interesting body scan, but
Yeah.
more through visualization of fun things.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have many teens or high schoolers doing the 8-week mindful program, the MBSR or whatever, the 4 that you have laid out? Do you have high schoolers doing that, or is it really just for adults?
No, I mean,
It's been kind of modified down, so now there are MBSR programs for teenagers and adolescents. So you can do it for adults, there's ones for adolescents and ones for kids as well.
yeah, so the MBSR, like I was saying, at PAMP, they have, it's called CALM, mindfulness program, and it's an MBSR program, and it's for middle and high school students. And they also offer the traditional 8-week classes. Gina Beal is amazing. She's in this area, and she has written the stress reduction workbook for teens, and it's MBSR format. And it goes through, it's a structured, skill-based workbook that you begin in the beginning, and you build skill as you go. But it's very easy, accessible to teens. And then on her website, I think, she has even more resources. But she particularly focuses on teens and MBSR.
I took the class from the Medical Foundation, and there were parents with their teens, which I think was really good as they walked through it so that they could practice it at home together.
That's great, yeah. It really helps when parents and kids and teens can practice together.
Do you need to be a PAMP member?
No.
Oh, cool.
Just a question about yoga. So I've never practiced yoga before, and if I want to start as a parent, there's yoga is just everywhere, every community center. So I would not know which yoga should I go for. So is there a name for beginners yoga or?
So, yes, there are a couple I'd recommend. I did look up, so I don't live right in this area, so I can't tell you the studios I've been to here, but I did look up a few. So Yoga Works has a lot of different levels of classes. They offer ones for kids and adults. I would look for intro to Hatha or intro to basics or, something with intro in it. I really like Iyengar classes. You don't see them a lot, but I really like them because they really teach you the basics of alignment so that you understand the full benefit of the poses. They just specifically help you align your body within the poses to meet where your body is at. So they use props. A lot of yogas now don't use props, and a lot of them are flow. Moving in hot yoga and power yoga. There's all different types.
Yes, I was actually looking for the name of the not a center or a place to go to.
But a type?
The name, the type. So that's
Yeah.
the types of them are. It's
So
complex.
I would, if you haven't taken it before and you would like a real strong foundation, Iyengar is a great place to begin. When you see vinyasa, that means flow, and it's similar to kind of what we did here.
I'm a teacher, and I've been teaching LMFT first through third grade yoga, and I have my kids once a week for that. I just want to say, to encourage people who are considering getting their children into yoga, that the kids now, after they got over the initial what is this and why should I do this, they're really into it now. And some of the kids, I've had them for 3 years running, and
Great.
they really know what they're doing. They're very tuned into it, and if there's ever a time when they miss the class or we have to skip something, they complain about it.
Yeah.
Because they really want to, and so they really show me that they understand the benefits, that they see the value, and that they have an understanding of why it is good for them, and they're really into it now. But you know,
It took a bit.
it took 1 or 2 classes for them to see, but
Yep.
I can also see why it's hard for a parent to get their own child to do it. But if they're part of a group class, and again,
Yes.
I think the benefit for me was that they were a captive audience. They were brought in together as a class, and they were told, this is what you're doing. But once we got into it, they've been really great ever since.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. School-based programs are just popping up everywhere. They're amazing. They're in every city. There's a lot of different ones, but Little Flower Yoga for Kids, if you're looking for a book, is really a great sort of resource. You can look up Sensational Kids, but you can also look up different school-based programs in this area and look into getting it into your schools, if they're not already, because they are a captive audience. And once they do get in, they really enjoy it. And they ask for it.
Resources you guys listed are mostly in this area. Do you have resources for the East Bay?
If you email me, I could give you some. Yeah. My card is on the back table. There's books. There's a book list back there. We don't have copies. It's a long book list, but you're welcome to take pictures of it. Thank you for coming.